Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Let me take a moment to review the proceedings for tonight's meeting. I have a script I'm going to read from so that we make sure that everything is clear. First of all, thank you for being here. I want to express my appreciation to all of the members of the public who have written to us about this appointment, have shared endorsement letters, stopped us at the grocery store, emailed us, called us, texted us. It is clear to all of us how much you care about this city and how much you value the importance of this decision. Thank you for taking the time to share your thoughts and your preferences. Before we begin the interviews/presentations, I want to outline the process and the rules we will be following to allow for respectful discourse. We ask that all audience members follow our rules of decorum: no shouting, cheering, or jeering. We want no one to feel hindered in expressing their views. Please understand that excessive vocalization has a chilling effect on public process. However, we will deviate from our rules in one area. This time, we will allow clapping after each presentation has completed. These candidates have put themselves out there in a very public vetting process, and it's not easy to do this. And they are to be commended for their courage in seeking the seat, and each candidate deserves acknowledgement for their willingness to serve this community. Let me now outline the process we are going to follow. First, the order of presentations is on the agenda. It was determined by drawing lots. The candidates will be waiting in the Friends of the Library seating area, and Deputy Clerk Joan Diskin will escort them in when it's time for their presentation. We will invite the candidate to this lectern and right in front of me and ask follow-up questions for 5 minutes. City Clerk Patrice Olds will be timing it and show a yellow card when the applicant has 1 minute left and a red card when the time is up. We will then invite the candidate to make up to a 5-minute closing statement. The candidate will take a seat in the audience. The Deputy City Clerk will bring in the next candidate. Following all interviews presentations, we will then take an additional public comment. Please make sure to submit your yellow speaker card to the clerk. They are available on the side tables and with the City Clerk. After closing the public comment period, Council will begin deliberations to devote, excuse me. We want to devote as much time as possible to this important discussion. When all council members have had an opportunity to weigh in, we will vote on paper ballots. These will be collected and tallied by the city attorney, who will hand them to the city clerk to announce the results. If there is not a clear majority, 3-1 or 4-0, a 2-2 vote is no choice. Council will have the opportunity to discuss results and decide to cast ballots again. So with that, we are ready to go to the first applicant, John Ebnetter, who I know he and Ellen Mallory have to get to planning. So let's get you guys in ASAP. Good evening. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
Okay, we got questions from the council? I think that's what you're waiting for. Councilmember Gothos, do I see you?
Sure.
Okay.
Could you give us a little bit more clarity on your answer to number 5? What are the 2 most important issues facing San Mateo?
I identified them as housing and traffic. I think they go hand in hand. I believe that for us to have adequate housing within our city to meet the demands would drastically reduce traffic, which will then curb greenhouse gases, which is an overriding problem with all aspects of our city. There was one other component that I have rethought since that letter, and I think some of that is complacency within our city, where we have it really good here, and we've had it really good for a long time, and things are changing, and I think we need to address them. And one of the key components of addressing our environmental issues is through housing.
Can I ask one follow-up?
Is through that? Is that what you said? I didn't
Yes.
hear the last part. Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead.
I want to talk about your answer to number 3. How would you seek to serve the underrepresented in our community? And if you could address specifically neighborhoods that you feel might be underrepresented.
I think North Central is the prime example of an underrepresented neighborhood. I see it as a legacy neighborhood that had been redlined and had restrictions on property ownership for many, many years. And I think that we now need to admit our past digressions where we did not have an open opportunity for all people within our societies to live in peace and harmony and own property. And I know it's an extremely difficult task to accomplish citywide. I think we need to start to address it, admit it, and put protections in place that will help people who have not been able to participate in the economic boom that most of us have.
I have a question. Okay, on question number 1, how would you handle a matter that has very disparate views? And you describe basing your decisions on what would benefit the majority of San Mateo. Could you expand a little more on that?
In the Planning Commissioner handbook, which is only about 30 pages, I believe, what really caught my eye when I read it years ago is that all of my decisions are supposed to be based on what is best for all of San Mateo's, not particular groups. And I've always tried to implement that in my decision-making process as it pertains to Planning Commission decisions. And you don't always get to benefit everybody, but you need to look at that as your goal.
Okay, great.
I don't have any questions.
I don't have any questions either. So, hearing none, why don't you go ahead then and
Great.
give us your closing.
Great. Good evening, Mayor Pappen, City Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to interview for this open spot. From advocating for housing, a ban on single-use plastic bags, the adoption of PCE, supporting the Bridgepoint Ice Rink, receiving concessions from developers to pay for child care facilities, and furnish additional sidewalks as public safety measures, my efforts have all helped.
John, could you speak into the
Yeah, I was
microphone,
just
please?
My efforts
wanna interrupt you.
have all helped San Mateo. My focus has not been on a single neighborhood or special interest group, yet it has been on how to improve San Mateo for all its varied population. I look at all the city's qualities and challenges as shared resources and opportunities to to improve our lives collectively. The experience that I have in working with the less advantaged has taught me many lessons on the needs of those with restricted access to secure housing and food. Couple that with my ongoing education as a planning commissioner, I spend a lot of time and effort on how to maximize the city's limited budget to best improve those most in need. This is what representation for all residents is about. I have been a proponent for higher and denser housing as it addresses our most pressing issues of equality, economics, and environmental concerns. A flexible and well-implemented ADU program, along with increased density and height limitations, can supply housing to a wide range of workers and family members. Many of the goals and aspirations that I and others have been advocating for many years have formed the base of the city's general plan vision statement. My focus on eliminating inequality, developing affordable housing for all, and pushing for environmental solutions align with the city's long-term goals. Thank you. I have advanced from a union carpenter to the level of project executive in the general contracting business over the last 30 years. The skills I have learned include budget control, time and resource management, long and short-term planning, interacting with ever-changing clients, and most importantly, addressing pressing issues with varied interests, working collaboratively to achieve the best outcomes. To be able to navigate and succeed in this business has taught me many skills that are transferable and relevant to the success of a city council member. In the private sector and in government, it is all about what is best for the team's outcome, not about the individual member's own gains. One of the glaring disparities between my private sector job and city government is the speed at which both work. I am used to a very fast-paced schedule and budget-driven job with all the demands of urgency to perform. On the other hand, governments work at a very methodical, measured, and cautious pace. The climate crisis affects every aspect of our city's ability to function today and to plan for tomorrow. and it is not waiting for us to speed up our response. Coupled with complacency and the inability to comprehend the utter disruption that climate change will bring to our doorstep is leading us to the brink of failure. We need to act as if our lives depend on how we prepare our city for the myriad of issues from sea level rise, urban fire devastation, power outages, and extended periods of drought. It is imperative to streamline our processes to have any chance of preparing this city for the following generations to enjoy. I have been called an alarmist, hero, out of touch, but I get it, troublemaker, a leader, and a visionary by a variety of citizens here in San Mateo. I will tell you what I am is willing to fearlessly promote ideas and factually based data to help this city forge its way through a highly charged and uncertain future. I am not intimidated by or willing to ignore the daunting economic, equality, or environmental issues that must be addressed to ensure the future of this city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
John, thank you for all your service to San Mateo.
Make sure I could see over it.
Welcome. Okay. Questions?
Ellen, could I get you to expand on your answer to what are the two most pressing issues in San Mateo?
And in what way would you like me to expand? Would you like me to go into more depth of each of the answers, or
Yes.
what are you looking for in your answer?
With regards to, sorry, I'm on the wrong page. Yes, you mentioned housing and infrastructure. Could you specifically mention your ideas in both of those areas?
Okay. I think what worries me the most about the housing issue, other than what I stated in my application, is that we are under extreme duress, I would call it, from the state to comply with the plan at the state level for the housing issues. We have very high RENA numbers, and we are having to accommodate those numbers when I feel very strongly that the San Mateo way has been to think things through and plan things out. And we are building, we are planning through the general plan for the housing. So I am concerned about the state hand in the municipalities. And as for our infrastructure, I think I mentioned in my application that there are additional issues with streets, with sewer lines on private property, and I would like to see a plan in place to spend money on our streets, because as we build and as we get higher density and more individuals in the city, our streets are going to show more and more wear and tear. Our sewer lines are going to show more and more wear and tear. And we're spending a lot of money on our new clean water program. And I want to make sure that the sewer laterals on private property are taken care of so that the whole system works seamlessly.
If I could, Madam Mayor, ask one follow-up. Your answer to number 3 with regards to underrepresented in our community, I would ask, are there neighborhoods in our community that are underrepresented, and what could you do for them?
I'm going to say that, yes, there are unrepresented individuals in every neighborhood. It's been my experience when I have been out in the neighborhoods that there are people that speak to me when I'm out there about their thoughts about the city and how they feel about certain things. But that happens with individuals in those neighborhoods. And I think as council members, we need to make sure we're out there pushing into those neighborhoods and doing more outreach to those who might not be willing to speak to us unless we approach them first. So to go into their neighborhoods, to their festivals, to go into their performances and seek people out. I know they're doing that in the community development department, and it is working extremely well to get people's opinions. So I'll say again, yes, there are underrepresented individuals, but I think that we do a good job of trying to get into all the neighborhoods.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I was very interested when I read in your responses to the questions of all the different positions you've held and different things you've been involved with. And I just wanted to ask, what do you consider your greatest accomplishment throughout all of this?
I think in 2013, when a bond measure came in front of the school board to place a measure on the ballot that would provide 85% of the dollars to facilities in Foster City and the remaining amount to technology that had a 6-year shelf life. That raised a huge red flag for me for 2 reasons. One, it was completely inequitable to the people who needed that money the most. And fiscally, it was irresponsible to spend facilities money on technology that most people use grants to get. So I did not vote for that bond measure to be placed on the ballot, and I did go public with the fact that I was not in support of that. That was a very, very difficult time in my life. It was not easy to go up against an entire school district, the consultants, and all the people who wanted to have that money in Foster City. But I did persevere, and I did talk to a lot of people, and I went to a lot of meetings. And I tried to explain the reasons why I did not feel that that was a sound bond measure. It completely left out Sunnybray, North Shoreview, San Mateo Village, Fiesta Gardens. Those schools that needed to have improvements made were not even considered in that mix. So I did go against that bond, and it was defeated at the polls, and I consider that my greatest achievement.
Okay, thank you.
So getting back to question 3, how you would seek to serve the underrepresented in our community. Could you talk a little bit more about how your experience on the school board shaped your perspective on that and what you feel that would make you a more effective council member with that regard?
As an elected official for the school district, I felt that it was my place to both represent the people in that district and to fully understand what was happening at each school and in each neighborhood. So I made that my goal to visit 2 schools every week, and I cycled that through my 4 years on the school board. And when I went to visit the sites, I went into every single classroom, and I went into the language learner programs. I went into the special needs programs. I talked to the teachers, the principals. I talked to parents that were working in the classroom. And I went to every single festival and performance that I could fit into my schedule. And I talked to people there. And by doing that, I learned about what was working and what wasn't working, so that when things came before us on the school board, I was able to say, yes, I agree that that works, or no, that I don't agree that that works. And that was a very necessary part of my education for the educational system, and to inform my decisions as I faced them on the board.
Thank you.
There was a subsequent bond measure.
There was a subsequent bond measure that divided the money equally among the two cities and the schools. It addressed the overcrowding issues in the schools that were overcrowded, and it passed. And I voted for it.
Okay, I don't have any other questions. Any more questions?
Did that subsequent bond measure do something at each and every school?
That was the plan.
It did?
Yes, it did.
Okay, thanks.
Just like Measure L did.
Okay, so we will, any other questions? Questions? So let's go to closing your closing statement.
Mayor Pappen and council members, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight for the open city council seat. In thinking about tonight's remarks, I tried to find one underlying factor for my focus as a council member. Although it's human nature to gather with those of a like mind, polarization is a dangerous thing. How we include the neighborhoods and community stakeholders impacts the quality of life in San Mateo. So as we address major issues, we also need to consciously address polarization and understand that the only way to solve problems is to convene, collaborate, and compromise. My vision for San Mateo comes in large part from the work we've done on the General Plan Subcommittee, encompassing diversity, balance, inclusivity, prosperity, and resiliency. I want a San Mateo that my daughters will come back to because the city is a wonderful place to live. I envision a San Mateo where everyone is welcome to express their thoughts on how our city is managed, where homes, services, schools, and activities are affordable and accessible to all, and our residents and businesses have embraced a sustainable way of life. There's no argument that housing is our most pressing issue. Not only are we dealing with limited housing stock, but we also have state RHNA numbers to comply with. I'm proud that San Mateo is building housing and is in the middle of a general plan reboot. I want us to continue with the way we handle things in San Mateo, by thinking it through and planning it out, to build housing in varying densities where it makes sense to build it, with services and amenities that support the residents. This is a pivotal time in San Mateo, and it's imperative that we strive for diversity of perspective and thought when we address the city's pressing issues, to embrace every culture, age group, race, socioeconomic level, religion, and neighborhood. Everyone needs a seat at the table, and my goal is to reach out to all residents, east and west, north and south. We don't hold district elections at this time, so a council member must represent all residents and business owners in San Mateo. I will tell you that I do not have an agenda with any group in the city. What I do have is a clear understanding of the demographics of the neighborhoods and 2 decades of experience on 3 commissions and the school board, working to do what's right for our city. I approached this appointment differently than I would have a campaign. I asked people who have knowledge of me as a colleague to tell you what I'm like to work with. Do I walk the talk? I hope these letters provided you with a picture of my strength, my institutional knowledge of the city and the community, my ability to work with others, my professional conduct, and my public voting record on important issues. I am a ready-to-go candidate who can step seamlessly into the position of council member. My successive roles of complexity and responsibility serving the city have provided me with unique institutional knowledge, in-depth knowledge of our infrastructure, and a clear understanding of our community's vision and hopes for the future. I served 8 years on the Park and Rec Commission, where I worked extensively on the formation of the Park Master Plan, Seal Point Park, Bay Meadows Park, and the preschool program. While on Public Works for 2 years, I worked on the critically important Clean Water Program and cell phone antennas. Currently, as Vice Chair of the Planning Commission, I have closely studied and approved 5 housing projects with many more pre-application phases. And as chair of the General Plan Subcommittee, I've been working on the city visioning process, outreach to shareholders, stakeholders, and defining study areas. While on the San Mateo Foster City School Board, I opposed the bond measure both in the vote at the board level and at the polls because it provided no facility funds to San Mateo. I could not, in good conscience, support a measure that was so blatantly inequitable. Each of these roles has given me the skills and experience needed to navigate the challenges this council and our community face in the coming year. As you deliberate, please consider my reputation as an engaged commissioner and board member with institutional knowledge of the city issues and as a collegial, level-headed, and open-minded colleague who will convene, collaborate, and compromise. I thank you for your time.
I will attempt to do that. Is that loud? Am I loud enough?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very
Good
good.
evening. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay. Questions? Councilmember Goethals?
Sure. Brian, could you expand on your answer to number 5? What are the 2 most important issues facing San Mateo?
Yes. My first item was maintaining the quality of life for all citizens. And my explanation was there is a significant amount of stress in the daily lives of all of our citizens. The actions and inactions of city government can reduce some of that stress. Just getting up each day and getting around the community is difficult. Traffic, the cost of living, isolation of many residents, and the access to affordable health care, especially mental health care, all contribute to the quality of life in San Mateo. However, I think the city can do much to reduce that day-to-day stress and improve at least maintain the quality of life in San Mateo. That has been a hallmark of our city. Safety is paramount to quality of life. Top-level public safety programs, community services, community development program, public works, parks, all contribute to the quality of life for different people. Different people get different advantages from those services we provide. The second one was fiscal stability. Before the city can provide any services to the community, you have to have the funds or assets to pay for those services. I mentioned there are a number of opportunities for the city to generate sufficient revenue to fund this many services needed and promised. The establishment of so basically from an operating budget standpoint, there are funds available typically, but what do we do? Whereas you could spend all your money every month and feel very happy about the services you're providing, but not have reserve accounts for the rainy days. And we all know that there's an anticipated downturn in the economy, recession, sometime in the near future. You can't keep going the way it's going, and it's only prudent that the city have a substantial reserve accounts in all of the various enterprise funds and in the general fund to be able to sustain.
Can I follow up on your answer to number 3 as well? Number 3 asks about underrepresented in our community and how would you represent them? Do you feel some of our neighborhoods are underrepresented, and how would you address that?
Well, I'm taking from your question about neighborhoods being underrepresented. It's underrepresented where? I assume it's in the council. I've heard some talk about that in town. But underrepresented in their ability to have their interests voiced in a manner that gets to where someone can actually take action on it, or to either positively assist them or positively or absolutely say, sorry, we can't. We can't do it. The city can't do everything all the time. And I think it's important for the council people to avail me as a council person to avail myself of any opportunity to interface with the all aspects, all communities, all parts of our community, including the those with language barriers, those with a large number of people care about the city, but they are working so hard day to day, they aren't paying attention, they don't have the time, or we don't get the message to them. And I know the city's done a really good job of improving the messaging we have on our websites, but still people are needed to, very often you say, hey, do you know about this? They go, oh, I didn't know it was going on. So, somehow, and council members can have a lot of influence on those kinds of messaging opportunities.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks. I did have that question, but I quickly shifted. I have a question regarding number 4, which is, do you believe that the city is taking appropriate, sufficient actions to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions? As you may have read recently and in our REACH codes, one of the big factors we're looking at is the use of natural gas in new construction mostly. Right. And natural gas is seen as continuing to pollute the atmosphere. Lots of carbon emissions come from that. And additionally, as a firefighter, you can probably relate to the fact that it's dangerous. Right. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about how you would seek to help people realize that we need to move into the future by eliminating carbon emissions and seeking to be safer. Can you tell us how you would do that kind of outreach?
Well, as it relates to the natural gas concerns, I'm honestly a little ambivalent about it. As a firefighter, I'm very concerned about natural gas. Natural gas, though, I'm way more concerned about the propane tanks in your backyards or on your decks than I am about natural gas. Natural gas has been around for a long time. It's relatively safe. I've had a comment later about PG&E, and one of my little retired consultant jobs was to help write a new emergency plan for PG&E, but we'll get back to the question at hand. So the REACH code, as it relates to natural gas, I think is an important continuity step in terms of how, identifying all the greenhouse gases that we have the ability to make some impact on. So I'm supportive of the idea on new construction, on the installation of new fireplaces, those kinds of things that you can do in old structures in terms of eliminating, the wood fireplaces. And we did that for a long time, and it's much safer to have the gas fireplaces now. We get rid of the gas, so there's some, I'd be cautious about that, how far to go with that step. But in terms of the overall issue of greenhouse gases, I'm a huge supporter of anything that we can do as a city, as a region, to send a message that it's an important thing. And having a REACH code is one of those opportunities to get people to ask questions and say, why are we doing this, and is it really important? So I think it's important for us to be consistent in messaging and how we explain to people why this is important, because there's so many people. Again, it's one of those things people hear about, but they don't understand how it affects them day to day until someone can take the time to explain it to them. So.
Thank you for your comments.
Did you have any questions?
We're
We're out of time.
I'm okay without asking my question.
Okay. So, Brian, take it away. Give us your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank you for the opportunity to interview and apply for this position. And the question is, why am I interested in the position? Truly, it's my attachment to San Mateo, my affection for San Mateo. I'm one of 10 kids who grew up in Shoreview. As a kid, we rode our bikes all over the city, enjoying all the parks, participating in the summer programs. It was just we went to the Boys Club Park and East Park. East Park is Martin Luther King, and the Boys Club Park is now Harbor View. And the quality of life at that time was different, but for us it was the best. My wife and I got married in 1974 and bought our first house on 2nd Avenue, a little 900 square foot cottage, that had 14 windows that were blown out of it by the neighborhood kids because it had been a rental. We now live on, and we stayed there for about 4 years, and we moved to Millbrae, where I started my firefighter career. We spent a couple of years, maybe 6 years in Nevada and 2 in Foster City, and then in 1990 we moved back to San Mateo. And we've been in the same house ever since, and we raised our children there. Now I've got my grandkids coming around the house and hanging out, but it's so it's my experience as a young man and growing up. It was a great place to grow up. It's a great place for my kids to grow up, so I'm happy with that, and I want to see that continued into the future. So that's one of my interests. But to have that high quality of life we need now, it takes a properly structured organization. A city organization that we have now is very well structured. It's staffed sufficiently to support the day in, day out line operations of the public works departments, of fire and police. We have a great library, and we have excellent parks aren't quite good enough yet, but we're working our butts off on it. And I'm being facetious for Sheila if she's here. But the parks are just a wonderful, and our park programs, I think are outstanding. And so, I want to be able to support those in a position as a council person. I'd be able to do that more than I can now. I have, maybe talk about my qualifications a little bit. I have over 25 years experience as a fire chief and emergency manager for city, county, and federal agencies. I was fire chief in Millbrae for 12 years, for the city of Union City for 3 years, the city of San Mateo for 5 years. And post-retirement in 2008, I was fire chief at the Presidio Fire Department for a year during a transition period when they went to disband their fire departments. They brought me in to help manage that process. I was interim fire chief at Stanislaus Consolidated Fire Department out in Modesto, where we were able to put together a shared services agreement with 3 other agencies, Oakdale City, Oakdale Rural Fire District, and Stanislaus Consolidated. I mentioned that because it's one of my passions in my professional life, is that we have way too much duplication of services, because we have, and the Peninsula is a great example, so many small cities, and back in the 50s and 60s, everybody had to have their own, which is, always say you can have your own, it's just gonna cost you more money, and there are better ways to do it. And those of us who were involved I had a part-time project manager position with the consolidation project for San Mateo, Belmont, and Foster City, and to me it was a career goal, and it's great to see that happen on the Peninsula, because I hope that's an example of other opportunities that cities can work together to reduce unnecessary duplication of services and improve our quality of life, maintain our quality of life by providing those all the services we do provide. For the most part, there are opportunities to share the expense and the management of those. Let's just skip ahead a little bit. Change is difficult. This is in the context of what I'm hearing in the community today. Change is difficult for most people. That's a known. And when change is unwelcomed or unexpected, it's even more difficult to accept. The current conditions of inequality, housing shortage, rising rents, traffic and congestion, all affect all of us in San Mateo and in our region. And again, collaborating with our neighbors is critical. Our neighboring cities and the counties, even Bay Area counties, to come up with the big solutions to solve some of our problems. And as a council person, I recognize that, and I can see us continue as a city to seek opportunities to work with other agencies to address some of those day-to-day issues. As the role of the city council in determining the direction of the community is fraught with challenges and requires openness and inclusion of diverse interests. But ultimately, the city council must lead the community forward. I believe the city council members should be hopeful in their desires for the community, but also honest about the ability for the city to meet all of the disparate interests in the various community groups, neighborhoods, and individuals. The city cannot be everything to all people, and thus the city council must make goals carefully and thoughtfully.
I got to ask you to wrap up, so
Yes, okay.
as soon as you can here.
I've learned in my many years of leadership experience it's very important to listen to the interests of all stakeholders when deliberating prior to making decisions. The city council must strive to reach decisions that do the most good for the most people. If I'm chosen to be appointed to the city council, I'd be honored to serve City of San Mateo, the community, in this critical time.
Thank you, sir. Feel free, Lisa.
Thank you. The shorter people have to do things, yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so you're on a roll. You want to keep
Sure.
going, Councilmember Goldfuss?
Sure.
Okay.
Lisa, could I ask you to expand on your answer to number 5? What are the two most important issues facing San Mateo? You mentioned housing and traffic. Could you expand just on what the issues are in those two areas and how you would address them?
Sure. Well, first off, let's take housing, and specifically affordable housing. I'm preaching to the choir. You know all the statistics about how many units that have been built, and we've achieved 87% of our RENA numbers when it comes to above moderate income housing, but the real issue is the missing middle, that once again, housing developers get bonuses if they build low income housing, and therefore they can build more market rate housing, but there's no incentive in the middle. And if you look at most of the people who are looking for jobs in San Mateo, who are looking to stay and live in San Mateo, they are people who are not making what Sergey Brin is making. They're making what the service people are, what people in regular jobs are. And I think the last statistic I read was that only 13% of people who live in San Mateo actually live in San Mateo, work in San Mateo, so they have to go out. So we really need to find a way of getting more middle housing available. And a couple of ideas that I have are, number one, increasing our percentage of middle income housing that we require developers to do. Number two, when I was looking around and talking to people, HIP Housing, and I'm sure other nonprofits, are doing interesting deals with housing developers so that they allow the impact fees to go directly to match with the nonprofit who has the land, and make sure that all of that is 100% affordable housing. So that's the number one issue. In terms of traffic, you really can't separate the two, because if everybody's leaving San Mateo to work somewhere else and everyone's living somewhere else and working in San Mateo, we need to work on how do we improve our infrastructure. And while Caltrain is a great improvement in the electrification, we need to do a lot to work on east-west traffic, which is where most of the traffic is today. And one of the things that we already have are traffic action plans that each one of the neighbors and neighborhoods have come up with. And so putting the top priorities in there, number one, makes sense. Number two, looking at basic things, like I mentioned, of synchronizing traffic lights, and that would improve traffic. Number three, making sure that we really are maintaining our roads and that we're understanding where the traffic is going, not just where it is today. And then number four, getting people out of their cars. I mean, that's the ultimate long-term solution, but they're not going to do it today when most people are leaving San Mateo and going someplace else to work. So we have to improve our bike path programs. We have to make it safer to walk. I was walking across El Camino the other night, and I almost got run over walking with the light. So I think there's a real need right now to both increase affordable housing in the middle level, as well as making the traffic or the infrastructure we have work better.
Can I follow up on one other question?
Sure.
And question number 3 has to do with underrepresented communities in San Mateo. Do you feel like we have underrepresented communities or neighborhoods, and what could you do about that?
Absolutely. I mean, there are so many different kinds of underrepresented communities in San Mateo today. There are underrepresented by age, like seniors who are, I think, 15% of our population, and they're not able to get out and represent themselves as easily as they should be, but they have a great number of service needs. There are people who are parents who are working that don't have time to get to meetings, and you have to get to them wherever they happen to be, whether it's the soccer field or the Caltrain station. There are children in our community who are underrepresented, and we need to have advocates for them. But then we also have ethnic groups that are highly underrepresented, people who are non-English speakers, everything from Spanish speakers to Tongan speakers. And the way I would recommend that we get to them is, number one, go to where they are. We can say, put up a sign, this is important, but we have to go to where they are, talk to their community leaders, build trust with them, and get them to talk with us. And one of the things I've done on my time at the library board, this is really probably one of the most successful places to get underrepresented communities engaged and represented. It is an open space that everyone can come to. We also take our services and go out to the community and understand what their needs are, and then find commonalities. There might be commonalities between seniors and non-English speakers. There might be commonalities between working parents and people with no children, but we really have to find them and put them together.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah. With regard to question number 7, regarding the general plan update process, can you talk a little bit more about about your participation, but more specifically, I know you've been engaged in those meetings, how you feel like it's going?
Yeah, well, number one, as I said in my application, I've gone to lots of meetings, talked to lots of people, and I think the first phase, frankly, didn't go very well. It came across as very consultant-driven, and people were frustrated. They couldn't give their input. But what was so good was that the city council and the city staff recognized that, took the input, and said, okay, we want this to be an inclusive process. Let's retool. And then there was a real effort to do more pop-up meetings, which I think is great, but where the next level in future I would hope it would go as we continue to have discussions is that we go out and reach out to communities where they are by just putting up a sign and saying, we want to have a pop-up meeting in the King Center, as an example. That's a great effort, but it would be an even greater effort if you went out and spoke to the community leaders of that neighborhood, of that area, and said, we want to get to your constituents. How do we do it? Do we come to where you are? Do we ask, do you facilitate? I was speaking to someone who wanted to really get more parents involved, because if you looked at these meetings, most of them were people more of my age or even older than young people, young parents, and we need to get them involved. So I think it's really a question of finding out where they are, when they're available, and how we can use people they trust to help them input into the system.
Thank you, Lisa.
So I have a question regarding number 7, and which is, to what extent have you participated in the 2040 general plan update process thus far, and what are your thoughts as to how the process is going to date? And so into your first paragraph, you say that you commend the city for listening to the public frustration, taking a pause and extending the process. And you think that this was helpful in identifying the map to be studied to develop specific ways the city can meet our future RENA goals while maintaining the unique qualities that make San Mateo an appealing community and investing in areas of the city that have been historically underserved. That's the part I would like to ask you to comment on. Investing in areas of the city that have been historically underserved. Could you put a little more flesh on those bones?
Sure. Well, I would say that areas like Central, North Central, a lot of the communities that are older communities in San Mateo have not been, for whatever reason, have not been invested in as much as they should be or could be. And I know that in the next phase of the general plan, there's a real desire to look at neighborhoods from a cleanliness perspective, from a safety perspective, from a transportation perspective, and say, if we want to build more, if we want to keep our downtown vibrant, then we need to do more to invest. So the downtown plan, as an example, I think is a great plan, but we have to do things before that month, the full amount of the money is available to make our downtown vibrant, encourage people to come back to the downtown, look at communities like North Central or like Sunnybray or Fiesta Gardens or any of the areas around which there is a lot of construction right now. And there's a lot of impact in the neighborhoods. And so we really need to take that into consideration and maintain roads, maintain thoroughfares, understand where traffic is changing and therefore how different things have to happen. But I think that it's important to also go out and talk to neighborhoods and understand where they think investment has not been made and be guided by them as well as city planners that are looking at higher level numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? So we'll take it away, closing statement.
Okay. Thank you for letting me put my glasses on for this. So I want to say thank you to the City Council, to City staff, my fellow applicants, and thank you to former Deputy Mayor Maureen Frisquette, who's given us so many years of public service and is just a great model. I'd like to share my own personal story and how my life experience has forged the type of person I am and what I believe in. I achieve results as a result of collaboration, not confrontation. People call me a happy warrior. I will go and debate and promote people and principles as long as I possibly can, but I try to always do it with respect, with open ears, and with a smile. And I humbly believe that that, plus the story I'm about to share, is why I am the right person who should be selected for the council tonight. So my story starts, My story starts after living 9 years in Asia, studying Mandarin Chinese, and building successful businesses as a marketing executive with American Express. I came back to the U.S. in 1989 with my husband and our beautiful 6-month-old daughter. Very soon after that, we came out to San Mateo because we were both working for Visa, which at that point was still near the College of San Mateo. Even then, housing in San Mateo wasn't very cheap, so we made our home in Emerald Hills, but our village was always San Mateo, from our hairdresser to our eye doctor to our favorite Italian restaurant. After a successful career as a business executive, life took me in another direction. I was caught up in a freak accident, a PG&E and electrical explosion in San Francisco. It left me with 2nd and 3rd degree burns over half my body, and it took me 2 years of rehabilitation and several operations to fully recover. That only is relevant because it gave me so much time to think about what my life was and what was important to me. And I decided going forward that I wanted to focus on helping people make positive, measurable impact and to really try and learn from people around me. I also learned that life can be gone in an instant. So if you believe in something, you need to get it done now and not wait for the proper time. So I spent the next 7.5 years as CEO of a global nonprofit working with 120 groups around the world to bring sustainable clean water and sanitation to over 2 million people. There is nothing more transformative in this world than giving access to clean water. After that, my husband and I bought our home here in San Mateo 7 years ago. And there are so many things to get involved in to help make a positive impact on people that I just jumped in. I co-lead our sister district project, Local Chapter, focusing on bringing progressive change to state legislatures across the country. And we built that chapter up to almost 1,600 people in just a couple years. As vice chair of the Measure S Citizens Oversight Committee, I've been able to dig into the San Mateo budget, really learn, and make sure to follow the citizens' mandate that Measure S funds only are spent on vital services and roads. As vice president of the San Mateo Library Board, I love this place. It is one of San Mateo's greatest assets, and I've worked very hard to try and make it a place where everyone can come, get access to learning, jobs, entertainment, and the services and tools they need to get ahead the way they want to. Ideas to address our most difficult issues are already in our community. Being on the board of our neighborhood association and the Neighborhood Watch Board, I've tried to advocate for neighborhood safety and making our neighborhoods more community-oriented. We need to celebrate our differences, but we also need to ensure access and equity for all. When I was researching this application, I heard so many ideas about what we could do. Heather Cleary of the Peninsula Family Service suggested the idea of neighborhood community champions who would be given a stipend and trained to go and get feedback from hard-to-reach constituents. And we have a local nonprofit, Sustainability San Mateo County, who already has an ideas database of 55 pages of programs that have been successfully used by other cities. San Mateo can leverage that in order to speed up our already strong commitment to sustainability. I actively participated in all phases of the general plan, as we talked about. Our city has tremendous potential in front of us because we are part of Silicon Valley, and we need to take full advantage of that. But we need to open up that benefit and that variety to more San Mateans to get more economic and social opportunity. I want to work with others to make the tough decisions to attack the serious housing challenges we face as a result of this tech boom, and work with other cities in the state to alleviate regional issues such as the traffic we all suffer under. If we don't step up, then Sacramento will step out and step in, and San Mateo will lose our ability and our authority to determine our future and maintain our rich quality of life. I'm excited by the opportunity to serve on council, and I hope you agree that I would be an engaged and capable colleague who would reinforce the council's strengths and make the council even more effective. I take the trust I have very seriously, and I hope I have a chance to serve on the council with each of you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to, Councilmember Goldfuss on a roll, so go ahead.
Yes.
Welcome.
I'm going to start with the first question. It has to do with number 5. You mentioned what your 2 most important issues facing San Mateo are, sustainability and affordability. I want to give you the opportunity to sort of expand on those 2 things and how you as a council member could address them.
Yes. So to me, sustainability and affordability are very interconnected. Sustainability, I really think about it in terms of financial sustainability as well as our environmental sustainability. And in thinking about how we govern to make sure that we keep the lights on, that at the end of our pipes, that there is a city employee there to make sure that it's flushing down and not up, that these are the kind of things that ensure that we are providing excellent services. And so thinking about a holistic picture of what sustainability is from an environmental standpoint, from a fiscal standpoint, I see this council as doing a really excellent job. Fiscally, we have taken incredible measures to recession-proof ourselves, having 25% operating reserves, and being really conservative, especially in the good times, which is really hard to do when there's a lot of competing needs and we have opportunities to do more. We need to make choices today that will protect our tomorrow. And that's really what sustainability for me from an environmental standpoint is also about, is taking really big leaps in the ways that we can to protect our tomorrow and our future.
Could I switch gears to question number 3? How would you serve or underrepresented communities, especially neighborhoods, as a council member?
my entire life and career has really been about community building. And so I see this opportunity to serve the entire community. Representative government is one of the most important parts of our democracy. And so I'm here to represent the underserved and as well as everybody else. And so I really do see myself as bringing a broad base of community support with me, with the confidence of many people across many sectors of the community. And in terms of bringing all voices to the table, I really do believe that when we bring diversity of perspective, we get to better solutions. That when we have elevated discourse by bringing people with lots of different paths and experience bases, that they are able to elevate the conversation, and we get to so many better solutions that serves everyone's needs.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question, number 6, and this is regarding the city's unfunded pension liability. And I think many people know about it. It's a major issue. We have about $240 million worth of unfunded pension liability. And it touches everybody in this city in one way or another. And so while it's a known difficult thing to deal with, it's something we have to deal with carefully because it touches people's lives, people who work for the city, their ability to continue to support their family here, to be able to support their family in the future. How much will they have to live on when they retire? It's a major issue. And so we have to look at it, though, while balancing competing needs, maintaining services, and providing all the things that the people of the city expect that the city is going to do. So can you talk a little bit, I saw your responses, and I'm wondering, could you talk a little more about how you would strive to seek that balance?
Absolutely. Like you said, the unfunded pension liability is significant, and it does threaten our solvency as a city. To my knowledge, we are funded at 71% for the miscellaneous category and 61% for our safety. And so, as you said, it really is about balancing competing needs. The competing needs that I see here are the need to provide consistent services over the long term, the need to pay competitive wages and retain excellent staff, and the need to make good on our debt to our former employees, and also to maintain our reserves. I really think that the path that the council has taken, which is one of incredible discipline, is one that I see myself supporting very strongly. In terms of the decline in our retail revenue, I think we will need to look at alternative revenue options. My hope is that we can do that at the state level in closing the Prop 13 loophole and make corporations pay their fair share. I also see potential opportunities at the local level. Staying with our discretionary payments to shorten the amortization period is another key strategy whenever possible. And then balancing out the employer and employee responsibilities for pension costs in any way that we can.
Thank you very much.
Hi. For question number 7, I would like to expand a little bit on. You've been very involved in the general plan update process. Could you talk a little bit more about how you feel it's going, and what do you think we could do to improve the process?
Okay. So the general plan is something that I've been incredibly close to, and I've been working, in an inside and outside approach, working in concert with the staff and also in concert with the community. And my perspective is that the general plan is an incredibly iterative process. that has given me so much faith in our staff and also you as council members. What I see happening is a lot of really good listening and responsiveness and integrating new knowledge, looking to emulate best practices, looking to resource skills that, have been identified as being needed, like, for example, cultural competency, for example, the connection to the county health department and bringing a health lens. And so for me, the general plan process, it's a windy road. There's so much public education that's involved. It's a long march. But overall, I think that it's an example of, democracy at work.
Thank you.
Okay. So if you would, no more questions from council? I don't have any questions.
No, I don't have any.
So we will proceed to closing statement. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So, the first time that I came to San Mateo, I was pregnant with our first child. And I knew immediately that this is where I would raise my family. When I was growing up, my family moved around a lot, and it was hard. And there was probably a part of me that was wandering until we found our forever home here in San Mateo. There are so many reasons why I love raising our kids here. My kids learn to swim at the King Pool. They can hike Laurelwood with their eyes closed. And there are always neighbors looking out for them when they walk to school and downtown. And I think about all the ways that the city is so special to me. The first time I contacted the council with a question, I was invited to coffee. And years later, when our neighborhood association said we wanted to launch a beautification campaign, the city's response was, how can we help? These are so many reasons that I love to be a San Matean, that I'm proud to be a San Matean. And when I think about the changes that I've seen here over the past 10 years, I also think back 125 years ago in the time machine when San Mateo was first chartered, and our biggest traffic nuisance was livestock grazing in the streets. And there were less than 1,000 San Mateans. Today, if San Mateo was or the Bay Area was a country, we would be the 19th largest economy in the world. So what that tells us is that history is all about change, that change is the only constant. And with that change and with all this progress, we're facing growing pains, and that's always been the case. And I see this council working very hard to protect our quality of life. And there's so many examples of that, building resilient infrastructure to take Shoreview off the flood map, converting Waters Park, an underutilized office park, into housing, aggressively paying down our unfunded pension obligation, and strongly representing San Mateo at the regional level to improve transit, circulation, and our renewable energy options. None of these things could have been achieved without the persistence and pragmatism and cooperation of this council. And I want each of you to know that I hold you in the highest respect. And I really do appreciate the gravity of this responsibility. And to be quite honest, I don't envy your choice tonight. I'm here because I want to work together to build on our successes, planning for growth and a sustainable future. In my career in life, as a mother, as a nonprofit executive, as a startup founder, I have driven ideas to maturity. And then you do that through consensus building. And I know, and I have experienced what's possible when communities listen to and understand each other, and when we find places of alignment. I stand here ready to serve with the confidence and support of my diverse community. I believe that public service is a sacred trust, and I do know what is at stake: our livelihood, our homes, our community, and our children's future. I personally have tasted the sweetness of building and selling my own company and the bitterness of struggling to put a roof over my head and food on my table and to belong. And I persisted with a desire to help other people do the same. We face generational challenges that threaten our quality of life. And we San Mateans, we have the fortitude, the imagination, and the ability to create a city that works for everyone. Our best days are still ahead. And by inviting a diversity of skill and perspective to our conversation, it enables us to reach better solutions. I hope to pull the rope in the same direction as you. Honorable Mayor and council members, it would be an honor to join you on the council and bring our community together and forward. San Mateo has been a champion of diversity, inclusivity, prosperity, and resiliency. And that's what I'm here to fight and protect with each of you. Thank you.
Bring coffee for us?
Where's my clicker? Oh, you're gonna give it to me, thank you.
Welcome. Okay. So, just want to make sure we'll be able to hear you.
No problem. It's not usually a
Never
problem.
been a problem. Okay, well, excellent. All right. So we'll turn it over to Councilmember Goethals with first question.
Okay.
Robbie, Mr. Newsom, I want to direct your attention to number 5. We asked each of you to mention what are the 2 most important issues facing San Mateo and how would you address them. Do you want to expand on that answer a little bit?
Absolutely. So I think the 2 that I kind of put out there, and I think it's pretty common trend with the whole Bay Area, is affordable housing. We need to be doing more to find ways for working families to be able to live here. And then the second thing that kind of plugs into that is transportation. We need to find ways to improve the transportation to reduce congestion. And so it's finding that balance. I mean, obviously we need to keep developing, but we also need to make sure that as we develop, we're not creating a worse traffic situation. And frankly, in some parts of the city, we are seeing that. I also think we need to be looking at housing and make sure that we're not just developing, just rental properties and what are kind of considered tech housing. I think we need to be looking at continuing to grow all types of housing, particularly finding housing for our working class and for our, younger people who are just out of college and looking to make a way for themselves. I think we need to make sure that our new developments are contributing to the infrastructure that supports them. So if a company, developer is coming in and building 1,000 units, there needs to be some give back to the infrastructure around that to make sure that it's supporting the roads, the lights, the things that we need to make sure that we can get there and get through. My older daughter is going to Burrell Middle School now, and there's been a lot of development with the Station Park Green. It's almost finished, I think, as far as road closures, but there are mornings where we takes 15 minutes to go 1.5 miles to school, and it's almost to the point where it's like, if I didn't have 2 book bags and a saxophone to bring with me, we would just walk because it's pretty tough. And then obviously transportation, I've talked about this a lot in the past, but I think we need to continue to look at ways to get through the city. San Mateo has what I've always said is the east-west problem. We've got transportation all runs north to south, and really we need to see better east-to-west transportation. Maybe someday a light rail, maybe just better bus and ways to get through the city.
Great, thank you. I also want to direct your attention to number 3. Number 3 specifically asks about underrepresented communities. And in your answer, you mentioned underrepresented neighborhoods and some of the things that you would do. Can you expand on that answer about other things that you would do as a council member to serve underrepresented neighborhoods?
Sure. Well, I think there's, and that I answer this in other questions as well, but I think there's entire parts of the city that don't necessarily get engaged as much in the city business. And we need to do a better job of getting out and doing outreach to them. One of the things I mentioned in my answer was having conversations, maybe having city council meetings outside of city chambers and actually in the community, whether that be at the King Center or whether that be at the Bayside Academy has a pretty big space. You know, actually getting out, trying to do outreach, trying to make sure that we have people that are doing translations. I know we do have that technology now, but I think a lot of people don't feel that it's for them because, you know, English is not their first language, they're not necessarily engaged. Maybe they're not a voter in San Mateo, and therefore they think, I'm not a voter, so therefore I really don't have, you know, access. And that's absolutely not true. If you're a resident of the city of San Mateo, you're represented by the city council, and you need to be engaged, or you should feel that you can be engaged and be participating.
Thank you.
Okay. On question number 6 regarding the our $240 million unfunded pension liability, could you elaborate a little bit more about how you think about making the trade-offs and dealing with this challenge we have in terms of how we can maintain our city services and still, you know, honor our commitments to employees, past and present? Thanks.
Absolutely. You know, it's the age-old problem that the entire state of California is facing. We need to have more reform. We probably need to have a different way of compensating people. Some smaller cities have already moved to more of a 401k model where people contribute, the city contributes, you know, and doesn't match, but it's not as tied up in you know, state funding. And I think that definitely is something that has to be looked at. I think we also need to continue to look at additional funding sources. San Mateo doesn't have a lot of hotels, for example, but there are things like Airbnbs that in different cities you're now starting to see that they're using that as an additional revenue stream. And I'm sure that there are other things we could be tapping into to help generate income and then hopefully building on that income to reduce the liability.
Thank you.
Okay, Robert, in number 5, which is what do you consider to be the 2 most pressing issues for the city? Joe already asked housing and transportation, but you drill down a little farther and you talk about the lack of for sale housing,
Right.
which is certainly it's something that's not being built very much in our economy, and it has a lot to do with our economy. But I'm wondering, and I ask this because I'm engaged in working on this all the time, and so you say you think we need subsidized housing for purchase for our teachers and civil servants, and I'm engaged in trying to provide mostly what we find we can do, and that's hard to do, is affordable apartment type, you know, rentals, right? So tell me what ideas you have that would maybe be something new outside the box to try and build for sale products.
Yeah, well, it's not an easy solution by any means, but you know, my younger sister's a teacher here in San Mateo. She actually lives in San Francisco, which is a reverse commute. But you know, we need to find ways that our firefighters, our teachers, that teachers don't make a living wage, unfortunately, to be able to afford their own house. We need to find ways to be able to do outreach and, you know, give them some sort of a break or some sort of relief to be able to purchase in the peninsula. And you know, I take my younger daughter, to soccer practice in Bay Meadows area. And one of the things I just recently kind of discovered is that the Año Nuevo school, which is obviously a private school, they have some housing that they're subsidizing for their teachers in the Bay Meadows development. And I looked at it and was like, wow, why are we not doing that when we're approving new projects? You know, like, let's see if we can start building that in addition to, you know, having a certain amount of units be low income. Why are we not saying, hey, let's have a certain amount of units be dedicated towards civil servants and, you know, the people we want to be able to continue to sustain in the community. I hear from my sister who teaches Aragon regularly about the loss of teachers. It's very hard for our schools here on the peninsula to keep their teachers because they'll do that crazy commute of driving 2.5 hours, a day to get to work. But over time, they get burned out and they go and teach, east. They go further east where they can actually afford to live. And that's obviously that's a problem as well. It's one problem causing yet another problem, which is the teachers have a hard time, the schools have a hard time maintaining teachers.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I have no questions. We'll proceed with your closing statement, please.
Okay. So a little bit about me. I'm a Peninsula native. My family has been here. What's my time, by the way? You? 5? Okay. Peninsula native. I've lived, family's lived in San Francisco since 1850. I grew up in San Mateo. Came here as a young man. I've lived here as a resident since 1980 with a couple of stints away. I went to Cal Poly for 6 years, and I lived in Europe for a couple of years. Beyond that, I've always been a San Mateo boy. Have owned my home now for 20 years in the Sunny Brae neighborhood, and I love Sunny Brae. Went to San Mateo Catholic School, St. Matthew's Catholic School, Burrell Middle School, and St. Ignatius Prep in the city. I'm a Cal Poly major, studied graphic communications, and I actually work in what I studied, which is not normal for most people. Married, father of 2. I'm an operations manager for a printing company, which, again, proud Eagle Scout from Troop 42 in San Mateo. Troop 42 is looking for a home right now, so if there's anyone who has space, I've been asked to pitch Troop 42 needs a home. So I've been a board member for about 6 months now on the city personnel board, and I just recently graduated from the City Services Academy, which was an incredible experience. And if you haven't done it, I encourage everyone here to give it a shot. It opens again next year. I think I have a good understanding of what the challenges are that San Mateo is facing. I kind of bucketed them into three categories. Housing, we need to make sure that we're finding a balance. We need to continue to develop affordable housing, and by that, I don't just mean, we really need low income and super low income housing. We need to make sure that we're weighing the impact of these areas, these development projects on the community, and that we're building back in the community service and taking back from the developers something towards the projects for the neighborhoods that they make an impact on. As I said, I want to see a focus, if possible, towards more family housing, maybe a little less tech housing. I don't want any less housing, so I have to be careful how I say it. I also want to have the ability for people to be able to get ownership of homes and not just rent, which is obviously a huge challenge. I think we need to work on sustainability. We need to continue to fight climate change on a local level, and the city has done a great job of that, but there's so much more that can be done. We need to continue to build our transportation infrastructure, and we need to look for new ideas to make our transportation infrastructure better, because I have a reverse commute to Hayward every day, but I watch people go in the opposite direction every day, and I gotta tell you, I feel guilty for all of them. And they're people that I know and work with and go to school with, and it's really rough. I think we need to continue to use the technology here in the heart of the Silicon Valley. We should be building with things that are solar. We need more green streets, and how am I doing on time?
A minute and a half.
Okay, wrap it up. I think we need to really focus on making sure the people that are living here are thriving, not just surviving. And I think that that's a huge problem. And the other thing I learned in the City Services Academy, which was shocking to me, was just how underfunded the Park and Rec is currently. Our Park and Rec structure, our Park and Rec locations at King Center and Beresford are tremendously outdated, and we really have a challenge to be able to start raising funds to build them and make them more modern and able to use, more usable for what we need. And I think if I was in this position, that I could make sure that I'm good listening. I'd like to hold more outreach, more city meetings. I'd like to have more task forces. And by that I mean not just putting people on commissions, but actually having a problem identified, bringing people from different interests and different opinions together, and working in the short term to solve it. If I was given this position, I can commit to being accessible, engaged, responsible, and caring. And I think I've covered most of these points, but we need to make sure we're eliciting feedback from all San Mateo residents. We need to be sure we're listening to all views. We need to make sure that we're building teams and consensus, and I think our city council does a good job of that now, but needs to continue to be improved upon. We need to make sure we're engaging people who are not currently coming, make sure they know what's happening in their community, how it impacts them. And obviously, I come back to, responsibility of being green stewards, financially, working to reduce pensions, and then the last point being making sure that our residents don't just survive here, but they actually thrive. Thanks.
Just want to make sure everybody gets their money worth from the city council, so we're not even going to take a break just yet. Before we open up for public comment, couple things. Madam Clerk, how many speaker slips do we have? 4. Okay. And is there anyone in the audience who would like to bring up a speaker slip, who wants to speak but hasn't turned it in? That makes 5. Okay. And based on this, 6. Hold on. Let me fill this out. We'll see how many slips we end up with. I want to caution you, if you provided an endorsement letter, rest assured we have read all of them. And we encourage you not to restate your position in your letter and only speak if you have something new to say. This will allow us to get to the decision process as quickly as possible. The clerk will call up the 3 speakers, and I ask that you probably go just to the left of me, right of you. The clerk will be timing public comment on her phone, and then a chime will go off when your time is up. And I ask you please to conclude those comments promptly so that we can get on to deliberating. I understand you might have a new tally, Madam Clerk? 8? Okay.
9. 10.
Okay. So you have 10 in total. All right. Council, what's your thought process on minutes? You want 3 minutes? Do I hear anything other than 3?
I could do 2, but I don't think anybody's going to use the full 3 minutes.
Very well. I mean, if each applicant had 10, you give 30% of that time, I don't know. It's 2, yeah, I think 2 might be better. I'm leaning towards 2 as well. I won't be a total stickler if you're in midstream in a comment. We do want to hear from you, and let's take it away. We'll start with the first 3, please.
Okay. I'm sorry, the first speakers are Maureen Frisquette, followed by Nicole Fernandez, and then Claire Mack. So if I've called your name, if you could come stand over here so we can expedite. First speaker, come up to the lectern. If subsequent speakers, please line up here so we can process quickly. Thank you.
Well, you look familiar.
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor Pappen, Deputy Mayor Goethals, and members of the City Council. I actually had no intention of speaking tonight, even though this is obviously something very important to me. But over the past few days, I've heard from so many residents who expressed concern to me that the selection process they felt was being turned into a campaign versus the evaluation of the candidates. So I'm just here tonight to address the selection process. And first, I'd just like to note that there's a big distinction between an appointment and an election. While the latter is, at least to some degree, a pageant or a popularity contest, the appointment to a vacancy is based solely on merit and an assessment of the various candidates' qualifications and readiness to assume the role and face the tough issues that will come before you this next year. So I well remember when we appointed Councilmember Bonilla to the last vacancy, and while we had many highly qualified and very promising candidates, some with very large followings, we all agreed that Rick's numerous years of experience, his institutional knowledge, and Ready Now status made him the most highly qualified selection at the time. So you may also recall that our mayor, Diane Pappen, was a contender for the position, and despite her charm and popularity, and the fact that we all knew her and appreciated what she brought to the table, we still unanimously selected Rick because his experience and years of service exceeded that of the other candidates. So how fortunate that our voters put Diane on the council the following November. So to me, one of the most important factors is selecting a candidate who can see the big picture and represent all of San Mateo, rather than any particular group, neighborhood, industry, or interest. And having spent 8 years on the dais, I can't emphasize enough the importance of congeniality and professional demeanor. And my hope is you will select a candidate with an established track record of collaboration, one who has consistently demonstrated the selfless and courage conduct that drives consensus. For the long term, this decision is to be made by the voters next November, and I suspect we'll have a lively and engaged election. But for the short term, this is an important decision to be made by the council to facilitate the business of our city in the most seamless and efficient manner, and this can only be done by selecting the candidate with the greatest breadth of knowledge and experience. So in closing, I've always said San Mateo is lucky to have such an informed and engaged electorate, and seeing how many residents are interested in this position, I know your decision will not be easy. However, I have every confidence that you will do the right thing for the right reasons. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Nicole Fernandez.
Have no applause at this point, and if we could just go forward. Nicole, Ms. Fernandez.
Nicole, followed by Claire Mack, and then Adam Nugent.
Good evening, council members and Madam Mayor. My name is Nicole Fernandez. I'm with the Community Relations Council, and I'm a resident of North Central, although I am here as a resident. Thank you for this session, and thank you to all of the candidates who applied to fill the vacancy and the big shoes of Councilmember Frescott. And Councilmember Frescott, thank you so much for your service. I am here because you guys are looking for somebody who can build a sense of community, but also brings a bit of diversity and a new set of eyes to the council, to keep the council on path, but also to be open to different suggestions. And I think that the person who would best represent the diversity and the sense of community that and collegiality that this council has, while also, again, bringing ingenuity and compromise would be Amaranth. She lives in North Central with me. I know of her work well. This is not talking about any other, against any particular candidate for the appointment, but in my work with AMO, I think that she is the best person to represent the diverse needs of this community. She has been an executive director. She's worked in startup. She's a mother. She's done some amazing work in my neighborhood, and she has been able to build bridges and will build bridges across the city. I truly believe she is the best person for the job, and I hope that, and thank you very much for considering my comments tonight.
Okay, next speaker is Claire Mack, followed by Adam Nugent, and then Roz Koo.
Good evening, council and staff. There was a meeting in my house this past Sunday night, and it was about Sunnyvale. One of the Sunnyvale council people was in my home, and they're under a lawsuit to become a more diverse city. For several years, their council ignored the diversity in their city, and tonight they are discussing turning their city into sections. There are 7 sections that Sunnyvale is going to be turned into because they didn't pay attention to the so-called underserved communities in their community. San Mateo has done a little bit better, but we can do better than we've done, and there are problems that we need to face. I once asked the council, I called the council because there was a problem in North Central. I talked to 3 people on the council. One person told me, we don't involve ourselves in petty community disputes. One person gave me word salad. The other person came out with a measuring tape and did the work, got the thing solved. It was between a person from China and a person from Peru. The person from Peru had no respect for black women. So this other person from our city council came out and solved that problem. Recently, we had a thing at King Center, and I invited the audience to take advantage of their elected officials and talk to those elected officials. The council person who was there that day said, under her breath. She didn't want it to be heard out loud, but I did hear these words. I don't want to talk to those people. I was thoroughly disappointed. There have been things that have gone on in San Mateo, especially in North Central. I have not called the council because as having been a council person, I knew how to take care of what I needed to take care of, and I did it myself. At a recent council meeting, I listened to a woman complain about living on someplace in Shoreview, and that something needed to be taken place there. And all I could say, my heart kept saying, get out and take care of it yourself. You're a San Matean, you are government, you get up and take care of yourself. The people I've heard tonight all sound like people who can do those things. I am very proud of the people who got up here tonight and want to represent our city. But I am going to ask for you to consider someone from my neighborhood, because my neighborhood is the most underrepresented part of the city, has been for too many years. It's time to constantly work on turning that around. So Amerance-Lee is my candidate. Thank you.
Next speaker is, no clapping, please. Next speaker is Adam Nugent, followed by Roz Koo, and then Rich Hedges.
Looks like we have a North Central trend here for speakers. Amerance is my neighbor. She's also my predecessor as the Handsome president. And she was integral in the Love North Central cleanup campaign. Her leadership is in both the neighborhood, as a commissioner, as a general plan subcommittee member, as a businesswoman and mother, is extraordinary. She's inspiring. We know that she has the passion and intelligence to allow her to dig into the issues by researching the scholarship, the history, and the innovations from analogous cities, as well as seeking the community voices from across the city. Amo and I both chose to buy our homes and raise our families in North Central San Mateo. She is committed to ensuring that changes that occur over the coming decades enhance our community, not just North Central, not just the north of 92, but the entire city, and make this city one that's sustainable, both environmentally, financially, and socially. We wonk out about the finances of the city. I look at it from the infrastructure standpoint as a landscape architect. We both love Drew's presentation on the city finances. If we don't have the money to maintain our streets and provide the infrastructure we need to provide access over the coming decades, we don't have a strong economy. We don't have a future. Everything stops with our city finances. We can't serve anyone if we're broke. What that means is we need to make good decisions that are both sustainable from an environmental standpoint and from a financial standpoint and from an equity standpoint. And we need to have those decisions be able to be made that in a way that our whole city feels represented. And I think that having ammo on the city council to do that next year is going to be extremely important. Thank you.
Next speaker is Roz Koo, followed by Rich Hedges, and then Panah Stauffer.
Don't count.
Sorry. Here we are. Could stand to the side here. There's not enough slack.
No, that. You can hear me? Hi? Can you all hear me? I'll cut out the chase. And you know I'm here in support of, what's your name? Emery? Lee? Emily, okay? So I won't say any praise for her. But I want to share with you in 2 minutes flat, how do you establish a rapport between city council and a new minority organization coming to San Mateo? When I found our seniors, Chinese seniors, hang out in coffee shop because they have no place to go, they told me for 25 cents, you can nurse a cup of coffee for 2 hours, and no one will chase you out. This is how they spend time. So when they saw me, they plead with me, find us a place. So we have a place of our own. And then one day, there was such a place called Central Park Recreation Center. So right away, we tried to apply, but we got nowhere. They say, who are you? Why do you want to come here? That made me mad. So I waited, and then we have 2 benefactors who came on. One is Claire Mack, the other one is Jerry Hill, the 2 new council members. And they gave us the votes. So I learned always to count the votes. Do we have 3 out of 5? This time we have 5 out of 5. The first one, I refused admission because I didn't know whether he was a friend or a foe. And his name is Lou Pappen. He came, he is this gray hair with a beard, and I said, go away. But the next one came like a name of John Lee. I was elated. Finally, I have a Chinese representative. So I dashed out, no such luck. He was a retired Marine with a beard again. I said, who are you? He said, I'm John Lee. I said, no way. I cannot introduce you to my seniors. I said, all right, come with me. Now, I told the seniors, this is our long-lost cousin in the United States. I don't know how he got here. But John is very caring, was very caring. He said, I'm same as you. I am a senior. So he came always to our birthday parties. And he love us. And we, in turn, thank him by showing him how to eat Chinese dim sum. And you don't gulp. You nibble. Or the dough ball was stuck in your throat. And then finally, our one and only David Lim came. And he said to me, you have to become more visible. You have to show your place in the community. So we thought about it. So I said, you gave us the confidence to come out. We will not fail you. So we began to organize, Lunar New Year, lion dance in downtown as a fundraiser. And then the weather got too rainy, so for seniors, not good. So we decided to change to a Moon Festival. And this last month, we had an event, and we had 1,000 people in the park. So what I'm saying is it's a two-way street. It's very simple. And I think you need to reach out to the underserved population. And what I'm saying is you need a bridge. And AMO is your bridge. Thank you.
Thank you, Roz.
Roz, you still have 1 minute left.
No.
Hey, you come to my party, okay?
Okay, the next speaker is Rich Hedges, followed by Pana Stauffer, and then Lisa Tanner.
That's just fine following Rose. That's a tough act. So I'm here today, Mayor Pappen and City Council. I'm honored by this process, and quite frankly, you're dealing with an embarrassment of riches. It is really going to be a difficult decision. I've made my decision, and I would like to convey it to you. I sent you all a letter, And I'm not going to hit all of those points, but I want to tell you that, that I was so happy to see Claire Mack here. I worked on Roger Winston's campaign, God, 50 years ago, from North Central, and he missed it by a small margin. I was so happy to see Claire Mack in the city council, and she's right, Anne Maurice should be your choice for all of the reasons I've heard here tonight. And largest growing demographic in our city, amazing education, trilingual. I don't want to say any more because it's almost embarrassing. She's so well versed for this job. So please choose her. Thank you.
Next speaker is Pana Stuffer, followed by Lisa Tanner, and then Noelia Corzo. Noelia.
Hello, I'll be very brief. My name is Pana. I live in North Central. I do appreciate the opportunity to be represented by Amarants, to have my neighborhood represented. I'd also like to express appreciation for all of the details and experience that John Ebnetter put into his application. I think there are a lot of institutional changes that are needed in San Mateo, and I appreciate John's complete focus on affordability and equity, and I do believe what he said, that he would be a fearless advocate, but I also believe that he would be an extremely effective one based on all the knowledge and time that he has put into the city. Thanks.
Next speaker, Lisa Tanner, followed by Noelia Corzo.
Good evening. I know you'll be happy to hear that I brought 60 people with me, but they're all on paper. I was born at the county hospital here in San Mateo, and I lived in 6 different places in San Mateo, in apartments and homes. So I understand that it's important to kind of be representative of all of our city. You received a lot of emails in support of different people, and I wanted to submit this for the record, and I'll give this to Patrice. The following 60 names are a sample of San Mateo residents from all around the city who support appointing Ellen Mallory to the vacant council seat, pointing to her experience and abilities. And that kind of builds on what Maureen had talked about, which is, I believe, the most important thing. And I think it's also noteworthy to add that a good amount of these 60 people who had not yet submitted some emails also voiced their support for Lisa Nash. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Noelia Corzo, followed by Chris Brousseau.
Good evening, City Council. You all know me. My name is Noelia Corzo. I'm a board trustee for the San Mateo Foster City School District and a former San Mateo resident. I don't live in San Mateo now, but I did grow up in North Central, and it is the neighborhood that will always have my heart. I just want to speak to my support of Amarants Lee. I wanted to share a quick story with you and just a few remarks. So I met Amo the night after our current president was elected. I, on the spur of a moment, put together a candlelight vigil at Central Park. And I posted it on Facebook, and it was shared, and there was like 40, 50 people that I knew none of them. And it was really just spontaneous, and I met Amo because she walked into the group late. And I had everyone kind of share their feelings because, as most people remember, that probably wasn't a great night for our country. And Amo was very passionate about how devastated she was feeling. And she left that day. I didn't get her number. I didn't know her name. I didn't know anything about her. A couple of weeks later, I had a play date with some moms that I didn't know, but I wanted to meet because of some great work that I had heard was being done on our PTA, on one of our PTAs and in our schools. And Amo opens the door. And I just wanted to say that ever since I've really gotten to know her, her work in our community and her dedication to serving children, to serving elders, to Oh, that passed really quickly. Okay, let me just say this and I'll be done. I just want to stress that representation matters. There's absolutely underrepresentation on our city council, in our city government. And though I've heard a lot of rhetoric about avoiding confrontation and hidden agendas focused on one neighborhood or group, let me just say that I faced the same misguided and closed-minded judgments when I ran for school board. My work on the school board, if anyone here is familiar with it, can absolutely not be questioned. My work ethic, my unique perspective, it is doing positive things for our community, for our children. And I just want to say that breaking barriers and challenging preconceptions can be alarming to some, but courageous leaders recognize that it's the only way to create the strong and united community that we're meant to be. Thank you.
And last speaker, Chris Brousseau.
Hello, my name is Chris Brousseau. I'm a resident of Hayward Park, actually a different neighborhood. I've been in San Mateo for 18 years, and my children are growing up here. I wanted to first off say thank you all for your service. I know as a city we face a lot of very complex issues tonight. I'm here to advocate my strong support for Amo and ask directly that you vote for her to fill this vacancy. I understand it's a short-term vacancy, and so there's a key interest on being productive and effective very quickly. You've heard a lot of platitudes. She's obviously very qualified, articulate, well-informed, etc. You know, I've hired a lot of people in my time. I think she'd be a great fit for your team. So vote Amo. Thanks again for your time.
We're done with the speakers, Madam Mayor.
We'll come back in about 10 minutes. I am gavel-less, but I am not voiceless.
Sure. Too late. I read your.
Ready, ready, ready? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Good. Wow, that didn't take too long. Just need to wait for our clerk to make sure we're a go. We're a go. Okay, great. So now we're going to close public comment, and we will bring it back to the council for deliberation. I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here. So I'll take a deep breath. I've been through this process on all sides. The sun will come up. So, but I do think, I have privately thanked everyone, but I would like to publicly thank all the applicants as well. It is very difficult to put yourself out there. It's difficult on the campaign trail. It's difficult through this process. I went through a lot of angst myself to decide whether to even do it because the competition was so stiff. But nonetheless, it was a tremendous opportunity for me, and I hope that it will be looked upon, however it comes out, as a tremendous opportunity for those that did submit an application. So I could babble on forever, but I think we'll just turn it over to deliberating among council. Councilman Rodriguez wanted to take it away, so go ahead.
Okay, so we're all going to probably thank all the candidates here tonight, and that's for a very good reason, because each of you has put yourself out there. You have demonstrated you're willing to step up, and that is not easy to do. It is really not easy to do. My childhood home of Belmont recently went through a process like this, and they had 2 applicants. And so thank you so much for applying. My hat goes off to each and every one of you. Next, I really want to thank all of the members of the community who gave us feedback. All the emails, all the coffees, all the texts, stopping by my home and knocking on my door, stopping by Rotary and letting me know how you felt. I really appreciate that, and I'm sure my colleagues up here do as well. And what's interesting, going through that process, I will say that there were 3 candidates that most of those advocates were advocating for, and at least for me, it was pretty evenly distributed among the 3 candidates, Ellen Mallory, Amarance Lee, and Lisa Diaz-Nash. And while I was talking with all those community members, there were 2 things that became clear to me. The first is that all these people whom I highly, highly respect and I've known for years, and my friends, out of all those people, 2/3 of them are going to be upset with the decision we make tonight and who I vote for tonight. And that is because we do have an embarrassment of riches, and that's a good problem to have. And I'm very proud of San Mateo that we have such a deep bench of candidates that could step up, because I really do feel that all of the candidates could serve in this capacity and serve San Mateo well. The next thing that I learned, well, before I go there, I just want to make one more comment that, for those viewing at home, it might seem like everybody only supports one candidate, and it's obvious that Amarance Lee has tons of community support, but I do want to just point out that we as a council and part of this process did not encourage or ask that candidates encourage their supporters to come up here. So it's just in fairness to all the other candidates that maybe didn't go get all their supporters or ask them to come, I think it's fair to say that a lot of these candidates have very widespread support. The next thing I learned is that there's a good argument could be made for many of the top candidates, and who you support really depends on what criteria you're using. Do you change the criteria and that kind of moves somebody else to the top? And that's evident with the diverse support and that all the candidates got, and there's really good arguments out there, and there's no way around that. For me, and I think it's important that we up here describe what criteria that we're going to be using. For me, it's pretty straightforward. Whoever takes takes over this position has extremely big shoes to fill. And I'm looking to see who do I feel has the most experience, both depth and breadth, to take over from day one. And I realize there's different types of experiences. I realize, you know, we could make different arguments for different type, but for me, I'm really looking for relevant civic city experience. And for me, one candidate really stands head and shoulders above the rest. And this is not, again, this is not a knock on the other candidates at all. I think the other candidates would be fine, but Ellen Mallory, I look at her background, I see that she is the only San Matean that I know of that served on our three most important commissions that we have, our Planning Commission, the commission formerly known as Public Works, and Parks and Rec. I mean, that alone, if you think about the issues that we're gonna have coming up, just having that experience would enable her to hit the ground running from day one. She served on the grand jury. She's the only one of the candidates who has been successfully ran for office and was successfully elected and was entrusted with our kids' education. So I think that says something. And then also, too, one of the most important projects that we're working on right now, or initiatives, I should say, is the update of our general plan. And she is the chairwoman of that commission. So you take all those together, and I feel that that is the right thing to do. That's what we've done in the past, in the last two times that we've done this. I think it's important to note that in the end, the smartest people here in San Mateo, the voters, they're going to be the ones to decide in 2020 who they want to fill this position long term. So we're talking about a temporary appointment. And the last two times that this was done, one time the public agreed with us, the voters agreed with us. The time before that, they didn't. And so it is not, of course, you know, it would be insincere to say that there's no advantage of being selected tonight, but the voters have the final say. And that's, I don't really see any way around that. So I'm going to be supporting Ellen Mallory tonight, and I'm looking forward to a very lively election. I think that we're gonna have we have a lot of good choices, and going through the whole election process, like Diane did when she was not selected, I think it's going to be good for our community. It's going to bring up a lot of issues, and we're going to be able to decide as a community who fills that seat long term. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I want to thank Eric for making all those comments, and I agree with, to a large degree, much of what he said, especially that in the end, it is the voters who matter most here. And what we're talking about is nothing short of the future of our city and the way that we move forward. And whether we do forth in a way that's collaborative and includes people from all parts of our city, people who speak other languages, people who come from other countries, people who have been here a long time but just have different views, and how we're able to coalesce around the path forward. Okay? And I want to say, while I do value experience, in fact, it's how I got here, right? I feel that there are other things that we need right now. One of the things we really need is the diversity and the ability to bring together diverse people and diverse thoughts, and to be able to somehow work with a group of people from all sorts of different backgrounds, from different neighborhoods, different income levels, different job backgrounds, and be able to put together a community that's able to say, this is the way we want to go into the future. The future is really no clear and certain thing right now. We're looking at huge challenges from climate change. We have an economy that some people say is the best ever, and yet a bunch of other working people haven't seen a meaningful raise in 40 years in terms of spendable dollars. The world is growing more and more inequitable all the time. We have to be able to pull all these voices together to be able to make a decision about the future. I think Amarantz Lee is the person with that ability, and that's who I'm going to be supporting here tonight, because I feel that this young face of a woman who has lived many different experiences and done things in other parts of the world that are really working to bring positive improvements to people in those parts of the world, even today. After she went there and did what she did in her work, her experience in public health, her experience in business, all these different things will lend great abilities to our city. And I believe that she's the one who can carry us in that direction. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to start with John Ebneter, who spoke to us first tonight. And I've known John ever since I was serving as a commissioner. John gave us a fantastically sincere presentation tonight about what he sees are very serious challenges that we face not only as a city but as a society. And I truly respect the service that he has given. He has outstanding qualifications in every regard, including his experience as a commissioner. And he's been on all of the important commissions that Councilmember Rodriguez mentioned. For that reason, he should also be in the conversation of highly qualified candidates for this process. Throughout my relationship with John Ebneter over the last few years, we've had many productive conversations, and he has truly stood up and stood against special interests a number of times, and he is seeking to address those challenges that we face. And I'd like to thank John publicly for his service to San Mateo. He's already given us so much of his time.
And I second that.
Ellen Mallory spoke to us second tonight, and it's also true that Ellen and I have known each other since she was a commissioner. I know that she has been active in many other ways in representing our community. I have really valued our relationship, and it's no surprise that we have appointed her to several commissions. In fact, I think you could say that about all of our candidates. These four geniuses in front of you, we're not idiots. We've already recruited these 6 individuals to represent the city and to serve you. Each of them has been on a commission or served as an employee of the city, given us tremendous, tremendous service already. And Ellen is no different, and I thank Ellen for her service to all San Mateo residents. Brian Kelley is next. I've known Brian since 25 years ago, maybe longer. Brian talked only a little bit about his history in San Mateo. It's clear, I don't think there's anybody else who could love San Mateo as much as Brian and who considers San Mateo to have given him so much. And I look at our service as council members as really trying to pass that on. The same thing that San Mateo gave to Brian is what we're trying to give to all residents in San Mateo, is to give them that upbringing, that foundation where as they grow up, they're going to be successful because of the values that they have from San Mateo. I had the privilege to coach Brian's son in baseball. I've also had the privilege to see Brian picking up his grandkids at daycare. I know that he's one of the best grandfathers in all of San Mateo. His service to San Mateo is deeply appreciated, and his service of the JPA formation, it would not have happened without him. And so for that, all San Mateans should be grateful. And I personally, Brian, am grateful. Lisa Diaz-Nash has also been someone who I have worked with and served with. She has served the San Mateo community very well. She mentioned some of her service tonight, her service as in the sister districts and for progressive movements, and she has culminated all of her talents in order to push those issues forward, in order to make our society better, in order to make San Mateo better. And she talked about San Mateo as her village. I think all of us like to think of San Mateo as this small town that we're all a part of. Some places don't think that that still exists, and some people still don't think that that exists in California, but we're very privileged to live here and to have this community where we all know each other. And as Amma was saying, her neighbors look after her kids when they're walking to school. Thank you very much, Lisa, for your service to San Mateo. Amarance Lee was next, and I would say going into this process, Amarance was one of the ones who I didn't know as well as everyone else. I have seen her from afar in her leadership at the Neighborhood Association for North Central. I was very impressed at the things that she served on because of her leadership in the North Central Neighborhood Association. She also became a part of the Park and Rec Commission. She served very well on the Park and Rec Commission and also on the Park and Rec Facilities Committee, looking at the future of San Mateo and all the needs that our residents, our kids are going to have. What are the facilities that our seniors, as our senior population is growing, what are the needs that all of us are going to have? And I've seen Amarance's service on that committee and her service as a commissioner and her service on the Neighborhood Association really exemplary in all facets. Amarance, thank you very much for your service to all San Mateo residents. And lastly, to Robert Newsom. Robbie, I've known you for practically our whole lives, and we've had so many friends and relatives in common. We're both privileged to have grown up in San Mateo. Hearing you speak tonight, again, I hear your love of your neighborhood, your love of Sunnybray, your love of all San Mateo residents, and you went down the list of all the neighborhoods, and you know the issues that are facing each one of those neighborhoods. It is a privilege for us to have you serving on a commission finally, and that was a good plug for the Citizens Academy. I think everybody should go through the Citizen Services Academy. Thank you very much for your service to San Mateo. It's absolutely a blessing to have these highly qualified candidates. As I was trying to figure out what are the criteria I was going to use to decide who the best person was, who I thought was right at this moment in time, I thought first to three major criteria, just as Maureen stated. Maureen talked about experience, Maureen talked about credentials, and I think when you look at the credentials and experience of all the people who have submitted, you could make an argument for anybody. You can make an argument for anybody. So what did I choose? I wanted to see commission experience, I wanted to see neighborhood association experience, and I wanted to see active engagement in the general plan. As Eric mentioned, three candidates really rise to the top when you look at those three criteria. It's Ellen Mallory, it's Lisa Diaz-Nash, and it's Amarance Lee. Those three have been the most actively engaged. And when you're talking about the commission specifically, neighborhood associations and general plan, Lisa had some tremendous experience working with the larger community and sister districts, but I think even Ellen and Amarance have a slight edge in that regard. And when you look next to the kind of criteria that Rich Hedges and Claire Mack and Roz Koo talked about, one of the very important points that I think was made by Roz was that you don't have to be a resident of the neighborhood to serve that community. She talked about how John Lee rolled up his sleeves and he came out and wanted to help her, wanted to serve those constituents. We're all San Mateans. We're all San Mateans, and it's about you. It's about how you talk to your neighbors in San Mateo and want to serve their issues and serve them. How we're trying to protect our North Central residents from the flood zone by raising the levee. How we're trying to protect, how we're trying to serve our North Central residents with a fantastic retrofit of the King Center and really giving it a facelift. How we are trying to do well by our residents in Bay Meadows and give them the community that they wanted, the community that they thought they were moving into, and how we're trying to address traffic in all of our neighborhoods, So Claire Mack, Roz Koo, Rich Hedges, they were all right about how you don't have to be from that neighborhood in order to serve those residents. All of us are here to serve everyone in San Mateo. The last thing that I looked at, the last criteria I think that I have at my disposal is that we have received, as Eric mentioned, so many letters, so many emails, had so many conversations with everyone, literally everyone. And I have received more comments about Amarance Lee than the others. Amo, as people like to refer to her, has a record of success that starts with her service to her neighborhood association, her collaboration with the city council, her service on the commission, and she has been actively engaged in the general plan process, trying to make it better at every stage possible. I may not know Amo as well as some others, but the people who have written letters speak to her in the highest possible ways, and they just say that we couldn't have a better person. These are people who I trust in our community, people who have tremendous judgment. And it is in line with everything that I have seen from Amarantz Lee as well. I will say one more time that each of the candidates has impressed me in so many different ways, and I appreciate their service to San Mateo. But for tonight, I believe that sending the message to the community that having all voices at the table is the best way for San Mateo to be representative of all our communities. This is the way to go, and I support Amarantz Lee.
I guess that just leaves little old me. So I know you've heard from everybody tonight that wants to thank all of the applicants. What the word that comes to mind for me is the word force, because I think that each of the applicants is a force of nature. I've known Brian Kelley for longer than you've known Brian Kelley. I just want you to know. When I think about the likes of John Ebenetter and his utter, undying passion for sustainability, I know you think you're good, Rick, but I think he might have you beat in that regard. Clearly a force for nature in that regard. Mr. Newsom, I'm just getting to know you. And I gotta say, your enthusiasm for this city is nothing less than contagious. And I so appreciate it. I just, even when I'm, at my most tired, and I see your enthusiasm, and it means a tremendous amount to me. Lisa Diaz-Nash, I mean, her story and what she's done with respect to Sister District, Homeowners Association, there's one other one I'm missing in there that I really want to touch on that I love that she does. The library, with near and dear to me, the library, we share that passion. Amarantz Lee, I mean, moved mountains, of trash, but moved mountains too when it came to North Central. And, I was out there both times for Love North Central. It was, not only were we doing something productive for the neighborhood, but it was such a great feeling. Ellen Mallory, I mean, she talked about that bond measure. That's why I asked her to bring up the part that actually did pass, because as I go around the city and I actually see schools building, I know that there are seats in those schools for our Hispanic kids from North Central because of Ellen Mallory. And it was not an easy stance to take. She was the lone voice. And I didn't even understand it myself until she was explaining to me that it was all going to go to one school and, the facilities money for tech, and I got it, but it was not an easy stance to take, and I know it was difficult. So each one is a force of nature as far as I'm concerned, and I have struggled long and hard with how to make this decision, and like my colleagues, it does come down to criteria. And what is the criteria that you look at? And I tell you what, I have gone round and round in my own mind. My husband's in the back. He can tell you he's ready to get rid of me. I've been contemplating this for so long and walking and struggling and whatnot. But I really did, I had to myself, and you're going to know the minute I say this word where I'm leaning, but at this point, I was really, having lost because of experience, I feel that I need to apply that. And when I look at the three most important commissions, Park and Rec and Planning and Public Works, and when I look at 5 years on the school board, and when I look at you are now the chair of the General Plan Committee, and this is only 12 months, and there will be November, come November, we will all be duking it out, myself included. I wanted to make the year as what's the word I'm looking for? not that it wouldn't be constructive, because that's not the right word. I just wanted us to sail as smoothly through as we could till we get to the election and we get a four-year seat fulfilled in an even year. So with that, my preference is Ellen Mallory. Let's formally take the vote, and we'll have to go from there after that, folks. But we need to go through the formality. Is that correct? Yes, Madam Clerk, okay. And this tells me that the microphone is on at all times. No grades.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I have the first tally from the first ballot. We have 2 votes for Ellen Mallory by Pappen and Rodriguez, and we have 2 votes for Amarance Lee from Bonilla and Gelthos. So that's a split vote.
All righty. So that leaves us with, we can take a second round of votes if that's what council wants to do. So we need to hear from these 3 distinguished gentlemen.
I want to add to the conversation. I think it's obvious to some people, it's certainly obvious to us sitting up here, that geographically we're not the best representation of the entire city, that all of us live north of 92 and west of the railroad tracks. And so it's hard for me as we're going through this process not to think about that we would necessarily select somebody who happens to live in that geographic area. We've gone through all the credentials, and I'm not suggesting that we make this vote based on something other than the credentials. I think we have highly qualified candidates and 2 who rise to the top. But I think that if you find them to be close, I think now is the time to send a message to the larger San Mateo community that we're looking beyond that geographic area and that we can fill that seat with someone who doesn't live in that area, and that our vision of San Mateo is that we're trying to preserve what's best in San Mateo. One of the things that's best about San Mateo is our diversity. We made it one of our goals that we be as inclusive, as diverse, and be as representative in our commissions as we could possibly be. I think we should do that on the council as well. Of course, only with highly qualified candidates, and now we're faced with exactly that option. So how can we best serve San Mateo if we don't invite all voices and all perspectives to the table?
Can I say something? I'd like to address that point because I do think that, if you look at this moment in time at where council members happen to live today, I don't know if this is, I would assume that it's an anomaly. And when I'm looking at trying to figure out what a fair criteria is, I think about how, just how I've moved around in my life. And when I was thinking about, that question that Joe brings up, well, first off, I think of that just a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, Joe happened to live very close to North Central, but then I was lucky to find that he was my neighbor, and I enjoy him having him my neighbor, but he could be living somewhere else in a couple years, and I look at myself and I think I've actually lived in North Central almost as long as I've lived in my current home, and I've lived east of Delaware longer than I've lived anywhere else. And it makes me just really wonder, like how do you forget, or are you somehow unable to represent the entire city by this physical location of moves? And I know that this is new. I know this is very nuanced, and how do I deal with it? So do I, do we, how many years of experience on a various commission or being elected to a school board does geographic location of your home address today count? And for me, I'm not trying to make it sound easy. It's actually very difficult. And for things like that, to say that that would be a tiebreaker or something like that, I would say that that difficult question should be left up to the voters of San Mateo, and bring in other voices too of Lisa Diaz-Nash, who I think is also an outstanding candidate as well. And the voters are going to get to decide among them. But the precedent that this council has kind of set in the last 2 times is they've went with the most experienced candidate. The last time this happened, I don't remember any council member, taking into account geographical location of the candidates. I don't remember when candidate Bonilla was talking, he went over his amazing experience that he had. He was in like every meeting that we've had as a city for the past 20 years, but we didn't talk about the fact that he might be the first Latino mayor in San Mateo, or the fact that where he lived. We were looking at experience because that's more tangible, and that's more, I think that's more of a fair way to look at it. And in the end, the voters are going to decide what's important to them.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to make a couple of comments. Can you hear me? Yes. So, I think it was mentioned earlier, the only constant in this world, change. Okay, change. It's simple. We can look throughout history. Those who weren't able to adapt to change failed to exist. Okay, San Mateo is at a crossroads. We're facing huge change. And we're looking at new and different ways to look at and think about and feel about things that we really didn't consider to be issues maybe 10 or 20 years ago. But now we know that having diverse representation is important. And the thing I want to say is that I know that the North Central neighborhood where Amo Lee lives is a historically underrepresented neighborhood that continues to suffer from echoes of redlining, which John mentioned earlier when he spoke. It was one of those only neighborhoods where people of certain colors and ethnicities could live. People think, well, that's all gone now and it's over, but it's not. We still, and I know we could have debates and arguments about that for a long time, but I know that certain conditions continue to exist because I have worked with my hands in the building trades all my life. I've had some different experiences, and I know what it's like to struggle. Even though I grew up in suburban Peninsula, I had different experiences because I had a different kind of family. And so we are not all the same. We're not monolithic, but we need to respect diversity, and we need to respect, I think, a neighborhood that needs a hand. And we need to look at all of the neighborhoods that haven't really had robust representation for a long time. Not that we don't. I mean, I constantly am saying I represent all of the people who are residents of San Mateo. And I reject all the ways of dividing people. I want to represent, and I strive to represent, all of the people in San Mateo. And that's the kind of colleague I'm looking for. And I'm not, no criticism of any other candidates, but I feel that there are certain aspects of what we're looking at tonight that really, for me, point to Amarantz Lee as a candidate who has done work in her neighborhood that has really coalesced and brought the people of that neighborhood around. They know and love and support her for the representation she has brought, for the collaboration she's created, for the we can do it spirit that they now have in that neighborhood that they didn't have just a few years ago. Okay, so for all those reasons, I still feel that we need to think about that.
I'm not sure I have anything to add at this point.
Well, could I suggest another round of voting?
I certainly can. Does everyone want to take another vote? I don't know that I'm ready to mark my ballot, but I may need a minute. I'll give you Rick's. Oh, wait. Kidding. I didn't mark it yet, so you'll just have to wait. There's no time limit on me. I'm running the meeting.
Madam Mayor, do you want another break?
Yeah,
5 minutes?
yeah. We'll take a break.
Okay.
So I'm gonna begin. Thank you for the break. I think we're all familiar with the rules, and that if there is an impasse, it is that the mayor would make this decision within 30 days of when Councilmember Frescott, Deputy Mayor Frescott left the council. Is that right?
That's correct.
So that would have to, the decision would have to be made before,
Actually, 30 days have to pass. There has to be a vacancy for 30 days.
okay?
So you would, I believe her last day was the 30th, and so 29th or 30th of November, you would be to make the appointment at that time.
Okay, I got it. All right. So there is a pragmatic side of me that would prefer that this be a council decision as opposed to a Diane Pappin or mayor decision, because I feel that that's important for us to move on. So I'm going to cast my vote, and we should have some, I don't know what the votes are at this moment in time, but I will cast mine and turn it in, and you can tell us where we are.
Mayor Pappin, can you hear me? I have the votes. We have one vote for Ellen Mallory from Rodriguez, and 3 votes for Amarance Lee from Bonilla, Pappin, and Goethals.
And then we're adjourned. I don't think there's any more business. Is there more business?
Formal motion and second to make the appointment, and so a motion for the council, second, and vote.
I move that we appoint Amarance Lee to the city council.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.